Motherhood and mom life is so difficult. It's more chaotic than I really actually anticipated. And there's such a much needed antidote, encouragement out there for us moms. The mom guilt is real. So luckily today I'll be interviewing a special person that has such a book that can give a lot of encouragement to us moms out there who are trying to navigate and need that encouragement of, are we doing this right? I think I am. So in this episode, I'll be talking with Hallie Dye.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
She is an author, a speaker, and she also hosts her own podcast called Saltworks Podcast. And she's also a wife and a mom of 3 and just all kinds of talents. And so today we're going to talk about her book called You're Still a Good Mom, Surrender to the One Who Never Fails, Even When You Feel You Have. And we're also talking a little bit about her podcast and how it started. So that's kind of today's show today. And listen, y'all, to the name of her book. You're Still a Good Mom, Surrender to the One Who Never Fails, Even When You Feel You Have. I mean, that right there, I'm like, I need that. Just listening to the title is like, I need that.
I know, me too. That's why I wrote it, because I needed it.
Yeah. Oh, man. So, but thank you for coming out here. I know we kind of live on opposite sides of the town. You know, you're way over there in like the north side, and I'm over here the southwest side.
It was worth the drive. Thank you so much for having me. We've been trying to do it for a long time. So.
Yeah, I know. Like this is like take 2.
Yes,
but I feel like this is really better timing.
Best timing.
You know, like it's closer to your book release. It's coming out, so. Yeah, so excited for that. And I'm also just excited to have a fellow podcaster. I don't know that many, and for to be a local person, I was like, somebody understands.
I know, yes, for real.
Yeah, so it's really cool.
I get it.
Yeah. All right, so just tell us about it. I mean, the title itself is like, wow, like I said, I need that. You know, tell us more about what it's about.
So the book, I started it like... I think the beginning of 2020, I've always written. I've always liked to write. I have had many poorly kept blogs, you know, poorly worded and poorly kept. But I'm an external processor. I like to talk things out, write things out, kind of figure out, why am I feeling this way? What's true? You know, and so writing helps me do that. And at the beginning of 2020, before we knew what 2020 was.
Yes. Yeah.
I really was like, I kind of felt like I wanted to get serious about writing. I didn't even know what that meant. I'm not sure I would have worded it that way at the time. Yeah. But just like, no, I'm gonna like have better journaling habits and, you know, really do this thing I know I love. Stay-at-home mom. We had, let's see, our kids would have been 4, 3, and 1 at the time.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Very busy. Then the world closed down.
Yeah.
So I'm already depleted. I'm already swamped, outnumbered, lots of wonderful things, but also lots of heart, lots of busy.
Yeah. 3 and a 1-year-old together.
It's...
I just couldn't. I can't process that.
Me either.
You know, and it used to not mean as much to me, but now that I have a 4-year-old, like now I can like try to imagine another one out in that same season with that one. It's like, how do people do this all the time?
Yeah. It's, well, the Lord.
Yes. And no sleep and caffeine.
Yes, exactly. Yes. That's exactly where we were. Yeah. And I'm, you know, staying home full time. And then you throw in like, now we're sheltered at home. Now we can't
even go to the park.
That's right. Can't go to a friend's house. You know, we didn't know anything then. And I just remember this feeling of like just depletion, like just this feeling of like, I don't even know if rest could refresh my soul. You know, like you feel that sometimes in motherhood. And maybe that's true, because sometimes we need more than just rest. We need more than just coffee, more than just a nap. Sometimes those things are the holiest things you can do. But you know, you know you need this deeper thing. And I sat down one night and just literally in the notes of my phone typed something out and thought, this is so funny that I had this thought, because little old Hallie in 2020 had no idea. But I thought, you know, this could be the beginning of a book. And it was. It's the intro to my book.
Oh, wow.
That's been edited a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Many times over. But it was. And I had no idea what it was. But I think the feeling that I really had was, you know, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if I'm doing this well. What is a good mom? Can we even define that? And we want to hear that from our spouse. We want to hear that from our friends, from our parents, our in-laws, our kids. But I think I recognized somewhere along the way of writing this book is I really need to hear this from the author of goodness himself.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know that answer for me. That's what kept me writing it. And so that's the premise of the book, is addressing, can we define that? What does that look like biblically?
Yeah.
Can we actually be free of this mom guilt and walk in this?
Like, what does God say
exactly
a good mom is?
Yeah.
Yeah. Some good thoughts there.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we definitely know it's for moms, but, do you have a specific type of mom in mind? Like phase of life or anything?
I would say this book, I pray, is beneficial for any mom who wonders, am I a good mom?
Yeah.
Obviously, the book is written more to the younger mom scenario because that's my
where
experience.
That's where you're from.
That is the examples. But because it is not a how to become and not a checklist of things to do, it really addresses the worth of a mother biblically. And so I've had readers who, in the process of editing, whose kids are grown and gone, I didn't know I needed to hear this.
Yeah.
And I did. And so I want to walk in wisdom of, there's not a whole lot I can teach a grandmother,
Yeah.
But at the same time, because of it is a biblical truth based on the worth of a woman in motherhood. I do believe if anyone has asked that question, that it has something for them.
Yeah. That's really cool. That's really cool that this book can be like timeless. Really special.
I hope and pray so.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. You were just saying a minute ago, like where you were when you were like thinking of this book.
Yeah.
But was there anything extra that did inspire you to say, okay, like from an idea of like you were, in the middle of the night to like now this is actually a book? Like when did that part happen?
A lot of times it happened in 20-minute increments because that's all that existed.
I get that because like as an author as well, like you just kind of start doubting yourself. You're like, this is good enough for that, or is it not? So you kind of like, not quite put it in the wastebasket, but you put it to the side.
Yeah. Or you go, I'll remember this. And you don't. So you're like, learn to write things down right when you think of it.
Yeah.
So a lot of times it would be like, let me run in here and write this thought down, and later I'd go back and go, oh, that was dumb. And other times I'm like, no, okay, I need to flesh this out. There were at least one, maybe two different summers, because I've been working on it for 5 years off and on, putting it on the back burner. We had different things happen in life. Just kind of, I would have a babysitter come and she would stay for about 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I would go to the coffee shop and I would write furiously and I'd come home. And honestly, Brandy, like that shaped, I think, my writing habits, because the truth is, like, if you feel called to write, you need to write when you feel like you have something to say. You need to write when you don't. Because if you wait until you've got childcare and you think you have an idea, and also if we believe the work we do in his name is spirit led, then he's going to lead you whether you're feeling creative or not, whether you're feeling exhausted, you didn't sleep, but I couldn't do it. Like, the babysitter's coming. Didn't matter if I didn't sleep last night. I have to go do it. And on the way there, I would just pray like, okay, lead me. And then on the way back, I'd pray like, if this is not what you want me to share, if this is not it, then just nix that chapter, nix this. And I honestly quit the book way more times than I worked on it. I can't do that anymore. It is coming out.
Yeah.
But audibly, I would say, I'm done. But the thing that kept me going back was, his prompting and me needing to know these things and his kindness to me and grace and all of that.
Yeah. How did you get connected with your, is Moody your publisher?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
It's a weird, crazy story.
I mean, guys, it is hard to get into that world. So how did this happen for you?
Yeah. So little backstory for people who aren't familiar with publishing, because you're so right. That's not how it works. And I want to be so upfront that I should not have a book deal. Like, that has 100% been a miracle in my life. And it's given me so much peace, because one of the things that I prayed over and over and over in the writing is, if this is not going to glorify you and it's not going to be what moms need to hear, then don't let it go out. I prayed that all the time. And so now that it is, I'm like, okay, I'm resting in you. Because of course you're going to have doubts and fears as you go. And so that's been my like, okay, you meant for this to be here. So for those who aren't familiar with publishing, it is a safer bet for a publishing company for you to have some type of, I don't want to say following because it doesn't have to be social media.
Yeah.
But you have people who are interested in your reading somewhere.
Or in you as a person or something.
Yes, your voice in some capacity. So for a lot of people, that can be social media. It could be a newsletter. It could be, a podcast. It could be different things. I do think the podcast helped because I don't really have a platform. So a lot of people talk about building a platform and that sort of thing. And you're familiar with all that. But for those not familiar with publishing, that's, you don't know how it works until you need to.
Yeah.
So I was set on self-publishing. I'd done lots of writing classes and courses and groups just to hone that skill, make some connections, ask questions.
Yeah.
Push through a lot of imposter syndrome.
Yes. I'm familiar with that too. Yes.
Yes. And so
just gotta ignore that.
I know. Yes. I've battled that in every area of my life. And so writing was no different. And all those things were so helpful. But everything you do is going to tell you need to build a platform in order to publish a book. It is a little backwards. It's a little backwards, the publishing world. But at the same time, publishers want to know they can make their money back.
Yeah, because you're their investment. And so it's them being safe.
Absolutely.
And you taking all the risk.
Yes. And they know who you are. They know your theology. They know, there's a lot that they're betting on.
And how serious you are about it. Like, is this something you're trying to make a quick buck on? Or is this really something true to you? If you're putting in the work to build that up. I mean, I get it, but it's hard.
It's hard. It's hard. And the system's not perfect. And so, but I had finished the manuscript at this point, but put it on the back burner for other things going on in our lives, good things, but just, things are on the forefront. Just kind of, it had been so long since I'd picked it up that I was kind of like, do you even, like, was this something you called me to do because you needed to refine me? Or is it something you actually want me to keep going forward in? Because I'm not going to publish this book just because I've said publicly I'm writing a book. Like, it's not about me.
Yeah.
If I need to fail publicly or look foolish, I'm used to that by now. That's okay. So I was kind of praying those sort of prayers. I had been working full time. I wasn't. My kids were all three going into school that year for the first time. So just kind of found myself in a new season. I had the podcast. I think, let's see. I think we had done season 1 and we were about to begin season 2 at this point. Yeah. And so it had been a while since I had worked full time actually. So the first Abide conference, for anyone who's not familiar, it's a conference that the Vine Ministry, a pregnancy mentoring ministry here in town, puts on. And it was the very first Abide conference. And so they're learning what they're doing. I'm good friends with one of the founders. And so I was, wanting to help in whatever capacity. And it gets closer to time. And she says, would you host the speaker? Which she had arrangements in a hotel. It was just, will you pick her up from the airport and make sure she eats, make sure she knows what song we need to come out for, when she speaks. And I said, yes, I would love to. And I really felt like, whatever you need me to do, if you need direct traffic, which would have been a ministry because it was August. And so here in Louisiana, so I was like, yes, I will do that. And I had COVID the week before. So I had major COVID brain. I was like, am I even going to be able to have small conversation, make small talk? So I pick her up from the airport. Her name's Trillia Newbell. A lot of people might know her book, 52 Weeks in the Word, but she has lots of great books and just launched another. Pick her up. She's the sweetest, kindest soul. Just really enjoyed her. And I'm getting to know her. She's asking questions. And she asks a couple questions like, well, Bethany, my friend at the Vine, was like, she mentioned that you teach, your life group. And I'm like, yeah, we do. And so I kind of talk about that and then switch the subject. And she said, well, she tells me you wrote a book. And I'm like, yeah, such, and I'm trying not to really expound because who wants to be picked up from the airport and then, you tell them you're,
okay.
Right. Yes. And so I'm like, asking questions about her. She's got 2 kids and they're older. Well, the next morning we go to breakfast. So we have time to just sit and visit before the event. And she's asking more and more questions about the book. Like, well, give me an example of that. What's the chapter? That kind of thing. And so I'm explaining, and we end up both tearing up. Yeah. Like, I don't like public crying for me at all, which the Lord is slowly breaking down. But we end up both tearing up as I'm telling this one chapter that ended up being chapter 3 in the book. She said, well, I'm actually the acquisitions director for Moody Publishers.
Oh, yeah.
Did not know that. And so she said, would you want to, maybe Zoom? She was flying out that day.
Yeah.
So would you want to Zoom and meet about it? And I'm like, okay. And I honestly thought I was playing it cool. But when we got inside, she said, are you doing okay? And I was like, yeah, like I'm great, and I'm thinking my COVID brain, I was like, yeah, and I'm honestly kind of trying to be quiet because she's got to speak. And I know I get really nervous, and I don't know if she need to look over her notes. And a little bit, she said, are you sure you're doing okay? Like your countenance, just like your spirit seems down. And I was like, oh, and I honestly wasn't processing this in the moment, but I said, well, I think I just don't want you to think like I've driven you around so that you'll look at my book. Like, I mean, I didn't know what she did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she goes, oh, yeah, lay that down. This is what I do. This is my job. Like I find joy in this. And like, I can't promise anything that's going to happen, but I think it's worth meeting about. So we did. And she encouraged me to go through the book proposal process with them. And, there were a couple of different steps, but
which that's a process too.
Yeah, it is. It was weeks of waiting. And, but yeah, I mean, very wild story.
That is. That's really cool. I feel like that's even just a word about putting your yes on the table, being willing to serve at something else, and how that was put together.
Yeah. Even with COVID brain, the Lord can work miracles.
Yeah. Or how there's just always purpose behind any little thing that you do like that. Like, you're helping out for that event, but then,
yes,
we're always there for a reason for your little thing. That's really cool.
It was.
Oh, man. So you mentioned chapter 3 a little bit. Out of all the chapters, was that the hard one to write, or was there any other hard ones or special ones that
I won't tell the chapter 3 story because it's so good. You just got to read it. You got to read it. It's a really, really sweet one. I think it'll be something people really enjoy and connect with. But I would say the hardest ones for me to write were chapters 5 and 6.
Okay.
I added them later in the game. Like I actually had to get my proposal re-approved, which wasn't a huge deal. But I just felt like there was a hole. There was something I needed to say. And I honestly couldn't say with clarity what that was. So chapter 5 is talking about how we have lack and limitation and that we're supposed to. That's design. So it really attacks mom guilt, which we can go into if you want. But chapter 6 goes into when we do fail, when we actually have failure and his sovereignty even in that. But I, for the love of me, could not stop mixing the two chapters because that's what we do. Yeah. We think that our limitation is failure. And I knew it, but I'm telling you, that's how deep that is ingrained in us.
It is.
We want to make our limitations and our lack outside of the Lord failure. It's not. It was designed to depend on him. So that one was really hard.
Well, now I don't have to ask you more about that. So tell us more about that chapter about the limitation. Just, give us some more, tease it out just a little where you can't just say that.
Well, okay. So I'll give the chapter opener basically, which is, I don't know, Brandy, like what you need as a person. I know I need obviously X amount of meals, snacks, enough water. I need my coffee, I need time with friends. I need time alone to recharge. I need every once in a while some time to create and dream, and I like to take a walk every once in a while because that gets me out of my, head and connect me with the Lord. And so I have all these things that I need, and I've always had those. I had those before I had kids, and all of those needs are good, right? I mean, we haven't said anything that's bad. All those things were acceptable. They're good. And then all of a sudden something happened. And between my water breaking and me coming home with a newborn, all those things were bad. because now when I need those things, I have to take away from my child. And so there's this feeling of failure and simply needing to be a person.
Yeah,
and
you're being selfish all of a sudden.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And not that all of those things, I mean, many of those things had to happen daily. Some didn't happen every week even. We don't always get to create, or dream, but all of a sudden having those things that I needed and the things I wasn't good at, the things that I was lacking, that was okay. Well, now my lack is my kids' lack. Yeah. Now my limitations are things they can't have through me. And I think there's the obvious truth of we're not their savior.
Yeah.
But also, it's really hard to define goodness. And what does God define as good? Well, it's interesting because when you go back to the Garden of Eden, he calls it very good. Once he created male and female. Everything was good. Then it was not good for man to be alone. And then they're very good, right?
Yeah.
Well, they were very good and they were not clothed. They had no clothes. They had lack. And the interesting thing is in, I guess, chapter 3 in the fall, they hide. They hear the sound of God walking in the garden, which how crazy is that? I always like that wording. Yeah. He could walk in the garden with them. They hear the sound. He calls, "Where are you?" And Adam says, "Well, we heard the sound of you walking in the garden and we hid because we're naked." Yeah. Well, they feel shame because they ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Well, it wasn't that they all of a sudden were naked. It's now that they have knowledge of their lack. But in their previous state, he had called it very good. Yeah. And so he clothes them. He gives them their consequences. He clothes them. But the idea there, and what's interesting is if you go back and read that passage, God's first response before getting to the consequences is, who told you?
Who told you that?
Exactly. Yeah. And so I'm not saying we should all not be wearing our clothes, okay? That's not what I'm saying here. But what I'm saying is, in a world where they didn't have need of a savior yet, because there wasn't sin, they always had need of a God. And when they reached outside of his presence to get with she and Adam both thought they needed, that is when sin entered the world. And so they had lack. Shame. They had limitation, but it's where they went with it. And so this idea of goodness isn't that you get this checklist right. I mean, if I teach you how to abide and I say, Brandy, here's the checklist. Have I really taught you the essence of remaining in him, or have I taught you self-sufficiency? And so the idea of a good mom is faithfulness. Like, you can't hold the outcome, but you can seek him in everything. You can depend on him in everything.
That sounds like a really good chapter. Is that something I can just skip to and just read that one?
Absolutely. You can read it however you want to. You have permission.
That's chapter 7?
That's 5.
Oh, okay.
Chapter 7's rest. Okay. That was hard too.
Okay.
That's hilarious.
Okay. But 7's on rest, which is kind of interesting. Is that on purpose, or does it just follow?
It was on purpose. But the Lord, I love that you saw that. But the Lord really kind of orchestrated that, because I moved a lot of chapters around. But that was one of those things that I was like, probably nobody will notice this, but it makes me happy.
Yeah. I'm a little bit of a Bible nerd, so
I love that you recognize that.
Yeah. I guess we'll include everybody else.
Yes.
Well, I'll let you do that. So,
well, on the 7th day of creation, so we just talked about the garden, he rested. And also, 7's the number of perfection and, the fullness. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Awesome. So is a lot of the book, are you drawing a lot of your biblical truth from Genesis, like from the garden scenario, or is it all over the place? Or
a lot of it is. Simply because, like, what do we all want to be in motherhood? We want to be perfect, right? We have this level of perfection, whether it's the way something looks or the way we said we'd do things, the things we said we'd never do, before entering in motherhood, or even just the way we feel. Like, there's a whole chapter about compassion, because sometimes we just have this low simmer of mom guilt because we don't feel the way we thought we should about motherhood all the time.
Yeah.
Where is that? Yeah. And so there's this whole compassion of the Lord. Like, there's a whole chapter about that. But yes, we go back to the garden a lot. Not every chapter. There are other passages. We some in the New Testament as well. that we'll dive into for different principles, but we do go back there quite a bit, especially in the beginning, because we think if we could have perfect circumstances, we could be the perfect mom. Well, even before the role of mom existed, that was not the case for Eve.
Yeah.
And so, and on the flip side of that, like, we have been made righteous with the blood of Christ. Like, it's no longer me who lives, it's Christ who lives in me. And yet I still want to add to that in terms of worth. Yeah. You know, and it's like Eve sort of had to depend on doing everything right. I actually don't. Yeah. In some ways, we have this level of perfection she couldn't dream of. Yeah. And we want to go back to perfect circumstances. And that's evidence of some idols in our hearts, you know?
Yeah. Would you think that has more to do with like the American culture versus some other cultures? Or do you think that's just kind of probably everywhere?
I think it is probably everywhere to some extent, probably in every person's mind. If we could have this, then we'd be complete. And I think it has to be because, I mean, look at the American culture. Everyone lives in wealth, no matter what that, compared to other countries. Yes. We live so comfortably, you know, and I realize there are varying degrees, and that's not the case for every single person, but for the vast majority, like, in the times we think we're struggling, we have way more than other places, and it hasn't filled the void, you know? And so I do think that in every heart there is something, because there is this void that only God can fill. But I mean, absolutely. I think the fact that it feels attainable in the American culture can make us.
Yeah, I think that's probably like the Great Gatsby, that like constant illusion of like, it's just right there. If I had just one more thing, and it'd be, and that's what keeps us on that farce, you know?
Think about how privileged it is to have the idol of self-sufficiency. Yeah. If you live in an agricultural area and you're completely dependent on your crops or your herd or whatever, you realize how out of control you are. Like you're waiting on the weather, whether you're a believer or not. Yeah. You realize the weather, the soil, the animals, the pests. I mean, you know, there's a lot of things outside of your control, but the American dream is, well, if I could do more and be more and earn more, then I can feel enough.
Or even in that scenario, if I can just monitor more or just be the really great caretaker and have no other life. Yeah. Oh yeah. You know, like, oh man.
Absolutely.
Well, this feels like a really great book.
Thank you. I'm really excited about it. Yeah. I really am.
So when's it come out? I know it's coming out soon. I pre-ordered it already.
Yes. Yeah. It launches March 4th. So it's right around the corner.
Right around the corner. Yeah. Are you having like a lunch party or like
we are
gonna be a book signing or anything?
I don't know if I'm gonna sign. I've had people ask that. I'm like, I don't think there will be any line there for me.
But there might be. I mean, you have like, you know, you're also a podcast host and a speaker. Like, it could be a little bit.
That's so funny. I don't know if that's true. I mean, I will sign if people want me. I feel like that would just like bring the value of the book down right now if I put anything.
Imposter syndrome, go away. In Jesus' name.
Be gone. It's with us forever. Yeah, I don't. No, this is funny though, actually, that you say that, because we are doing a launch party. I don't really know what that's going to look like totally. We have a meeting about that this week, but something with friends and family, I think, at the church. And I'm like having to mentally prepare to celebrate, because when I signed the book contract, it's like, well, if my friends wanted to celebrate, and my imposter syndrome would not let me. And I'm like, Hallie Dye, you will pull it together and you will celebrate. The work of the Lord is done. Yeah. Because there is a time for everything under heaven. But what's funny about book signing is actually, I think one of the things, this was Andrew's idea, that we're going to do is have a copy of my book and let everyone else sign it for me to keep.
That'd be special.
So, a little backwards. But that's how we're going to fight.
Well, because you always got to keep at least one for yourself.
That's right.
You know? Like, because I have a few I hold back to make sure it's not in inventory. Yeah. It's like, this is mine.
Right. Yeah. You could give them all away and then. Yeah. So true.
So that's a great idea. Good job, Andrew.
I know. He's the best. I feel like most of the chapters of the book are like me just like explaining the struggle and then Andrew's wisdom. I'm going to give him a cut, you know?
Yeah. That's awesome. Oh man. So is your pre-order sale still going on?
It's still going on.
Yeah. Do you have any record of that? Can you see that on your side?
I don't know if I can see it or not, but I'm like, maybe that's the Lord's protection.
Yeah, maybe you don't want to know. I don't know.
I will say this, like, I'm shocked that it's happening. So I have no preconceived notions about book sales or any of that. I'm just...
Yeah. Well, similar thing for myself. Like it's complicated, but essentially, no, I could not see. It wasn't accurate. Hardly at all. So
the numbers you were seeing,
I couldn't really, I cannot, like, I can see Amazon sales and that's it. And that's because I have an author account through that. So I can only see Amazon sales, but it's everywhere you can buy it. So like I did get a different royalty check this month. That only happens like quarterly.
Gotcha.
But I still don't even know the numbers from that. Like, I don't even know what that means.
Right.
So I'm like in the middle. I'm like, hey, email.
This is way too much.
I'm just
math.
Curious. And also, for marketing purposes, whatever. But I told my kind of a similar thing. I'm like, I think this is a good thing. So I don't obsess about that.
True.
And just move on and live in the message of the book. And so I think it's I'm with you on that. Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah. So I'm super excited, and you guys go out there, get that book. And I know it's on Amazon. I mean, that's why I pre-purchased mine. Do you have other places that are going to be available?
Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Moody's website. I don't know. Last I checked Moody's website, which has been a while, I don't know if it was available for pre-order, but it will be available.
But it will be there.
And side note, Moody runs like really good sales. They do like I think it's a semi-annual sale where, it's like 40 or 50% off. It's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
So. Look in there for some sales. Yeah. Be good for like baby shower type of gift, or even Mother's Day. Yes. So, and those will be coming up just around that. Well, everyone had babies anytime. But, but Mother's Day be in May. So it'd be a good gift for that too. If some moms or even new moms and that kind of stuff. So well, I'm excited for you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm really excited.
Well, I wanted to ask you too about podcasting for a minute, since I don't get to have this chance to talk about that. Yeah. And I know here people don't really know all the things. But for you, like, how did you get into that? Like, what was the idea for that? I know you had some background working with a different podcast for a minute. But how did Saltworks? How did that come?
Yeah, I had worked for a podcast before that's very successful and well known, but I was helping with content, and I was not at all ever in front of the camera or technical or even scheduling, any of that. And I can remember thinking I don't think I could do that. It was just so, I would get nervous, and I wasn't recording, I would just get nervous on recording days. And so never saw that happening for me. But when I went back to be home again, we had kind of a health crisis with my youngest, and that kind of just reset, I need to be back home. That's the only way I know how to really describe. And he's good, but it was a whole deal. It's a long story. That kind of just reoriented my priorities. And so that's kind of how that came about. But in the season where the Vine was starting, so that's that same ministry that I mentioned earlier that put on the conference. They're just beginning. So the conference is not in sight at this point. My friend invited me to a prayer meeting. They were opening, their doors had officially opened, but it kind of happened so quickly that they were like, our doors are open, our website's live, so we have to be there. But we still want people to come and pray for this meeting because nobody really knows what we do, So we go, they're in our life group at the time, and we go, and she gives us the whole story, which is just, miracle after miracle of the Lord opening doors, and the timing of everything is crazy. That's actually the first episode of the Saltworks. For anybody that wants to hear it, it's wonderful. But I just can remember thinking because I had kept blogs before, I wish I could get their story out. And I didn't really have anything at that point that would be feasible for me to use. And I just remember thinking man, if I had a podcast, I would love to interview her so they can hear her say what it is, because she just told it so well. And it was just so real and genuine, and then they could know what to bring and what to provide. And, where to send funds or whatever, because they had a lot of needs starting out. Mm-hmm. And I'm praying, and we're prayer walking, we're praying in the bathrooms because that's where women will take pregnancy tests and, just whatever. And I just remember thinking like, this is crazy. But I went up to Bethany and said, okay, this is a little insane, but if I can pull a podcast together, would you be my first guest? And she said, okay. And I was like, I'll take it.
Yeah.
So I started pulling together, like, I don't even know what the first steps of starting a podcast are.
I literally Googled. I was Googling, and there's like a WikiHow on it, actually, which is very helpful, by the way.
I probably did the same thing. I don't remember. I think I just blacked out in that part. No. But it was like, okay, what do I need next? And, and kind of, I needed to pull in other people. Can you help me with the cover art? Can you help me with the music? And because I did that kind of kept me accountable for like, okay, I've told this many people I'm doing this. I can't just quit because it's scary, or I don't know how to do the next thing. Mm-hmm. And so I just kept going. I mean, my feeling was, okay, I was working in a full-time ministry. Now I'm not. And I know where I'm supposed to be, but now my kids are in school. Yeah. And here's this need. And I have this time. If I can figure out how to plug 2 microphones into my computer, why wouldn't I be doing this? Mm-hmm. That was kind of my feeling at the time. Mm-hmm. And lots of imposter syndrome, at that point, I had no expectations for anyone to listen at all, because I'd kept many blogs where people didn't read, Yeah. And so, it was just like, if one person needs to hear it. But it's just been how to eat an elephant one bite at a time, and you figure it out. We're still figuring things out. Mm-hmm. We're in a studio now. We've got things like lighting and cameras, and we just kind of hope and pray that they work every week. I don't know that we can set it back up again. Mm-hmm. And now Lindsay Stagg, who you know, she is my partner in the Saltworks. Mm-hmm. And so,
and you have Colin too.
Colin is editing. I mean, I do not know what we would do without Colin.
Yeah.
Just have a really messy finished product, I guess. But yeah, honestly, if it weren't for Lindsay and Colin, I'm not sure we could have had season 3 because of everything with the book. I mean, they really have carried the podcast.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for them.
Yeah. That's great. Well, and I'm glad they've been able to jump into, because it's a good podcast. It really is.
And I didn't even say the name of Saltworks, but when we were starting it, and the idea was to interview people like the Vine, where nobody knows this is the need. Nobody knows the story. And I'm like, there's so many untold stories of people who might not write a book, might never stand on this stage, but they have stories to tell. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of the idea. And my mom suggested the name Saltworks. And Saltworks is a term meaning a place where salt is literally refined. We're called to be the salt of the earth. That's what we're undergoing, this refinement and sanctification as we walk on this side of heaven with him. And so there's that. But Saltworks can also be a slang term used for jobs of meaning like drudgery. Yeah. And like, that's what it looks like a lot of days, you know? So it's meant to be this encouragement as you hear other people's stories that, oh my goodness, I didn't know that was happening, in their life, or in right here in this town, this ministry is starting, or whatever that looks like for that week in that person's story. It encourages you to run the race set before you in your corner of the Saltworks. Yeah. So it's been really neat. It's absolutely not what I expected, and it's way better than I could have asked or imagined. So
isn't it great? Like, I love doing it. Yeah. And we always get a little bit more of the story than what actually gets produced out.
Yeah. Sorry. But I have no idea what all I've said. No.
No, but there's usually always a little bit extra little side conversations here and there before and after it. And, you carry them in your heart. I liked finding people and encouraging them to share.
Twisting their arms, whatever it takes.
Because I like people to understand that they all have a story. We all have experienced God, whether we know it or not. Yeah. And we all have one. They're all worth sharing. I mean, sharing, and our testimonies are so powerful. For some people, that is their Jesus that they see.
Yeah.
or hear. That's the gospel they're hearing is your life, your experience.
Absolutely.
And so whether it's a salt work or somewhere in the muck, and that's the genuineness part of it, hearing that from other people, like, man, that is that encouragement that they need. So yeah, I'm glad.
Well, and there will be people that listen to your podcast that will never listen to mine,
And vice versa.
And so it's just like, I've had to remind myself as you go, for anyone out there that's like, I don't know if I can do that, or I don't know if I should write or start a podcast. I can remember reading a motherhood book. I think it was A Waking Wonder by Sally Clarkson. Well, it was one of hers. She's great. She's just this sweet soul that she dreams well. She's an encourager. She's just kind and gentle. And I just like her. She's got a podcast, written a lot of books. And there was this one chapter, and I think it was Waking Wonder. And she just basically gave you permission to need some time for yourself. That is not like a groundbreaking truth.
Yeah.
But I needed to hear it from her voice. And I've carried that with me of she worded it so well, and it was truth and it was good, but I could have heard that from someone else and it might not have carried as much weight, but Sally Clarkson gave me permission
she
to rest.
said that.
That's
then
right.
It's okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I was sometimes your voice brings credence into things that someone else might not.
Yeah. Yeah. Annie F. Downs, certain things from hers is that's for me. I'm like, oh yeah, well, Annie said it. So,
that's right. Annie says, so we can.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. I was going to ask a little bit more about your show. Do you want to share a little bit more about how often? Yours is pretty weekly. You guys are pretty regular now.
Yeah. So I think when we talked last year, I'll say this. When I started the podcast, I was a one-woman show. I was recording, editing, scheduling, all,
Yeah, all the things.
You get it.
A lot of things.
A lot of things. Also still a mom of 3. And so I had to say, okay, our goal is weekly, every Tuesday. But if I have sick kids, the 3-kid life, somebody's going to have fever for 2 weeks. Yeah. And so if that's the case and I don't have a show stockpiled, then we're just not going to have a show. We're not out here to look perfect or have this professional, this curated product. This is real life. And if I can't record, then we don't have an episode. So we did season 1 for sure like that. Season 2, a little bit more as well. Lindsay helped so much because she does all of our logistics and schedule. I'm not good at that. And so she keeps
Which is a lot of it. That's half of it.
So much of it. And
just figuring out when we can both get together.
Right. Yeah. And just answering a text back. That's not my spiritual gift. And so she carried that. But even in season 2, we would sometimes, and she's a mom too. So, we had things going on. We would still not have an episode, but we've done ads this year. So we haven't been able to take a break, but the Lord's provided. Yeah. He has provided. He's stretched us in ways because we used to only so I would do probably 3 stories and then a standalone where we dive into someone's story in the Bible, which I love and we still do occasionally, but we had kind of a drought at the beginning of season 3 and I don't know why, but we could not get people into the studio. We were opened up whatever time, whatever, we'll meet you up here. It was all legitimate reasons. This person had that and this person, but it just wasn't happening. And so when you hit moments like that in ministry, you feel is this still what you want us to do? Are we trying to do this in our own strength? Is this? But he really obviously built a lot of refinement and faith in those moments, a lot of learning and leaning on him to be the provider, that we can do all the right things, but he brings the stories. It's not us. And so that was a reminder. But it also stretched our capacity to go, you know what, me and you can have conversations, know? And so we've done that a lot more in season 3 and we've enjoyed it. Yeah. It's been great.
I liked your one on forgiveness. That's pretty good.
Oh, it's brutal. That was Lindsay's idea. And I was okay. Yeah. Yeah. So, it's convicting.
I've done something similar, but I liked y'all's take on it. It was good.
Oh,
y'all should listen to Lindsay and Hallie.
Thank you. Do as we say, not as we do. No.
Yeah. Well, thank you for talking about both of your things, your book and your podcast and whatnot. Do you have any merchandise? Since, you have a website and whatnot.
So, okay, technically right now we don't have our website up. So we were moving towards that. We worked on one for a while and then kind of put it on the back burner. all in good time. We had sweatshirts for a while and then we closed them, but we have talked about having more merch soon. So I'm excited.
So on the lookout.
On the lookout. Yeah. Yes. That's something I would love to do.
Okay.
I love some good merch. You know? Yeah. Who doesn't?
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that.
Well, thank you so much for coming out all the way out here.
No, it wasn't bad at all.
And it's been great to hear from a local author, a local person.
Yes.
And I just wish you all the best with your book and everything else. So you have to get it. You got to go get it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. My name is Hallie Dye, and this is my story of the middle.
And I'm your host, Brandy Bostic. You've been listening for the Up From the Up podcast. If you're interested in merchandise or other uplifting stories, check me out at upfromthemonth.com.
Psalm 42, He brought me up from a desolate pit, out of the muddy clay, and set my feet on the rock, making my steps secure.